This podcast is sponsored by Hollywood Casino in Charlestown, West Virginia. April's featured entertainment includes Los Lobos on the 12th, Josh Turner on the 13th, and the Steel Woods on the 26th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Hulu is now streaming the new documentary, Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. I spoke with Amadi Boone, Monique Tolliver-Logan, and Emma Horton-Ferguson, three DC Metro Club alumni who helped launch Freaknik in Atlanta in the early 80s. Hey, Monique and Amadi. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Great to be on, Jason. I listen to you guys all the time.
All right, so it's called Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. It's now a documentary now streaming on Hulu. Why don't you just take turns introducing yourself? You know, say your full name and I guess sort of your title or whatever you want, your role with founding Freaknik.
All right, I'll start out. My name's Amadi Boone. Actually, I grew up here in Washington, D.C., and I was a student at Woodrow Wilson High School. Left D.C. and went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, where I joined an organization of students there in the Atlanta University Center. That organization was the DC Metro Club. So when I got there, there were already a group of students from here in the DC area. I joined and became a part of the club and eventually became the president of the DC Metro Club during my time there. And I was the president at the time of the founding of our event that came to be known as Freaknik.
Wow. All right. And there you go. Shout out Woodrow Wilson High School, because that's right in Tenleytown. That's right near our station. In fact,
yes, indeed.
I've done events there for, what was it, Hexagon. You does the stuff at that school. That's funny. All right. Well, all right, Monique, your turn. Your name and your involvement here.
So my name is Monique Logan. I am a board member of DC Metro Club when I came to Spelman College in 1982. When I came, I joined the DC Metro Club. During that year, our club founded what came to be known as Freaknik. Prior to the spring of 1983, they had been having picnics every spring. But it was that year, 82, 83, that we decided through our executive board to take it up a notch. And so we created what came to be known as Freaknik. I hail from Southeast DC, but I went to school at Potomac High School in Maryland.
Okay, so Woodrow Wilson High and Potomac High, and then DC, roots as well. But you both went down to the Atlanta area for college. You said Morehouse and Spelman, is that right?
Yeah, and we
Okay.
had students in our group from Spelman, Morehouse, Clark, and Morris Brown.
Awesome.
That's what makes up the Atlanta University Center. I don't know if I said, but when I came, I first was the freshman representative for Spelman. I became the sophomore representative for Spelman, and I eventually became the vice president under Emma Horton.
Gotcha. And they say in the documentary that the DC Metro Club was sort of like one of the most popular groups on campus there. Is that what you remember?
That is true.
Absolutely.
You had quite the reputation for fun.
Not just fun, but we were also focused on service.
Mm-hmm.
And Amadi, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I mean, we were definitely known as kind of the fun club. We were known as the party club for sure. We had made a reputation there in the Atlanta University Center, especially on the Morehouse and Spelman and Clark campuses, for the parties that we threw. But one of the big features of our parties was our DC homegrown go-go music. And so we had go-go music playing at all of our parties. So we wanted to make sure that everybody from everywhere in the Atlanta University Center got to know our DC music, the sound of go-go. And so that was a big part of our club's claim to fame.
Well, I like that you mentioned you brought the DC go-go, so you brought a little of the DC flavor of music down to the Atlanta area, which obviously has its own style of music, which would go on with Jermaine Dupri and 21 Savage, etc. nowadays. But take me back then, because we're talking music, how that sort of featured into what's in the title, the Le Freak, was it the Chic song, right? Is that sort of how it started?
Yeah, so let me give a little clarification there. So one of our board members, one of our executive board members, Mr. Tony Towns, who actually was my classmate at Woodrow Wilson High School, he was the DC Metro Club vice president when I was president. And actually, it was at the beginning of the school year, in the fall of that school year, before we had our very first event. Tony and I were having a conversation between the two of us and thinking we should come up with a theme for the year. And then we can organize all of our events around the theme. And because Tony and I were in high school together, we knew each other, we're having this conversation. He came up with the idea, let's bring back the Freak. Now, the Freak was a popular dance back during that time when we were in high school. It was, something that, everybody knew. We all did the dance, the Freak. But for us, the music, that would be more of an inspiration for that would have been more back to Rick James.
Okay.
DC's sound was more of the kind of the classic soul and funk, the Parliament Funkadelics, the go-go music, more so where Chic was more of a disco sound. It wasn't as popular for DC, but definitely more of the Rick James, which he had the song, Super Freak. But that said, the dance, the Freak, was more of kind of Tony's idea. Let's bring back the dance, the Freak, for our parties. And so
freak out.
Yes, right. So the Freak, Chic had the song, right? Le Freak and Rick James had Super Freak. But anyway, we just brought back that name, that theme to our parties and our events for the year. And that's how it came to be merged into the title of our spring picnic when we were at one of our meetings and we put the call out for help to come up with a name for our event. And one of our club members shouted out, let's call it Freaknik. We had one vote. It was unanimous. Everybody decided, yes, that's it. We're going to call our spring picnic Freaknik.
I love it. So combine Le Freak with picnic and you get Freaknik. I love it. There's the name, folks. And of course, thanks for mentioning the Rick James too, because everyone knows Super Freak, especially it became MC Hammer. that same thing was you can't touch this. But anyway, awesome. All right, so that's the name. Talk about how the early beginnings sort of in the 80s, about how it was different than maybe what it sort of became. There's parts in the documentary where there's younger participants and older participants, and they're like, so you missed the early days in what I guess in the 90s and after. It got like a national reputation on the news of like really wild partying. But talk about how sort of in the 80s it was a little bit different back in the beginning.
So let me do it this way. Let me start out talking about the early days, because after the first couple of years of Freaknik, I left, when I left Atlanta, I left that organization and the events, the DC Metro Club events and organization, in the hands of the others who were behind me, the other students who were still in college after I graduated. And so Monique was there during the later years, so she can kind of speak to that transition period into the 90s. I was back in DC at the time, but in the early days, our event was really a focus on us having a fun spring break activity for our DC Metro Club, for our fellow DC Metro Club members, students, and the other students in the Atlanta University Center who were going to be there on campus during spring break. We wanted to have something that we could do that would make that spring break week fun for us. Many people didn't get to go home for a spring break vacation. Maybe it was for financial reasons. Maybe they had schoolwork that they had to try to wrap up or tie up, or whatever reason, not able to travel, couldn't go to maybe Florida to the beaches like many other folks did. But we wanted to turn that week for us into a fun time as well. So we had our spring picnic our Freaknik event during that time. And in those early days, it was just about us students. And for us from the DC Metro Club, it was also our opportunity to do one thing that we always did with any of our social events, and that's for us to have a good time and have some go-go music. And so this was hot dogs and beer and chips in the park. Monique had a big hand in helping to organize and pull together the food donations and all, but this was more of a student event. It was nothing scandalous about it. It was just some college students having a good time. And yes, we drank some beer and we partied, and danced, but that was the extent of the scandal, if you will.
I
Not
mean,
that
come on,
scandalous at all.
who did it in
Right,
college?
exactly right. So it was a very normal, I'd say just calm, fun, picnic in the park party kind of event for us in the early days in the 90s. And then over time, because of the fun, the popularity, folks talked about it. They invited their friends. Hey, guys, you should come. We're having so much fun. So people invited their friends, and their friends from other HBCUs would come from Florida A&M, FAMU, from Tuskegee, from Hampton, from all
Howard.
around were coming to our event for the spring picnic, and it grew and grew and grew. And at some point, there was this transition where the students kind of lost control of the event, of the promotion of the event. The organization was kind of taken over by another entity, if you will. And I wasn't there during that time, but I certainly was hearing about how the event that we started had grown and grown and grown. And now there were tens of thousands of people and up to 100,000 people. And I was amazed at hearing these stories. But Monique was there during that time. So I'll let her kind of pick up and take it from there.
Yeah.
Well, I left Spelman in 1986. I graduated in 86. The event was still going on. It was still popular. It was still big, but it did not blossom until after I left. But because I lived here in the Atlanta area, I could see the traffic jams. I could see all of the things that were happening that eventually led to the demise of the event. So I was no longer a student, therefore I was no longer actively participating once it blew up in the 90s.
Right, right. And thanks for sort of drawing the distinction there of sort of the early days and sort of how it started with you all, and then it's sort of like anything, it snowballs and sort of goes and becomes its own thing. And like you're saying, it became like a destination for even out of towners to drive cross country, almost like a spring break or a Mardi Gras. There's even Jalen Rose, the basketball player, in now a commentator in the documentary, talking about being at University of Michigan, and him and who'd he say? Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, part of the Fab Five. I guess Chris Webber and Juwan Howard couldn't fit in the car, but they drove. You're DC people. Remember Juwan Howard and Chris Webber came and played for the
Yes,
Bullets for a little
indeed.
bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I'll never forget him calling that timeout at Michigan too, when they didn't have any left. But I digress.
And you know what? Something I'd like to say is that, you hear today people talk about, oh, I'm an influencer. That word wasn't a thing when we were there in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I think that I would say that our picnic was sort of twofold. One, as Amadi mentioned, we wanted to provide something for students to do on spring break because we couldn't go home. The other thing was we wanted to bring Washington, D.C. culture to the Atlanta University Center. Our dance, our music, go-go music, as you know, is very different from any other music. So we were trying to influence the AUC culture with students from other states with the Chocolate City flavor, if you will. So we, in a sense, were the original influencers.
Yo, Emma Ferguson has just joined the call. Emma, do you want to
Yes.
pick up on anything
Welcome,
that
Emma.
Amadi
Welcome.
we're just saying?
Hey guys.
Yeah,
I'm
introduce
so
us.
glad you made it. Thank you.
Yes, I don't know if she told you I'm out of the country.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries, no worries. This is across not I was gonna say cross country, around a global Freaknik call now.
Yes, it is. It's coming from the beautiful island of Anguilla. But yes, we were influencers before we even knew what before even that term was birthed into a position But the main thing, we weren't trying to influence, and I'm concur with the team. We weren't influencing what Atlanta. We were influencing this HBCU with what we grew up, which we valued, and
Right.
we held and still hold precious to this day. So we were being college students, young, gifted, black, organized and unified, deadly, and we just took it to the streets. Not, well, to the park. Let's say it that way. We took it to the park, and
Right.
then the streets got involved, and it became something totally different.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And Emma, real quick, could you just remind folks, since you just hopped on the call, remind us sort of your role in the founding of it?
Well, I'm part of the executive team with the other team, the treasurer, but DC Metro Club member for life, even when it has no life. But and we still holding together. So that's my role. And up until 85, in 85, when Tony and Marty left, I became president of the club. And then but the torch was passed on after I left. So
And where
intricate
in
part.
Amadi and Monique both shared that, they grew up in the DC area and told us what high
I
school they
grew up
went to.
in
So where did you grow up?
Northeast. I grew up in Northeast on Capitol Hill, but I'm a Crimson Tide, Dunbar, Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, proud Crimson Tide, proud Crimson Tide.
Still
And
repping Dunbar. You can hear the pride in her voice still.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And what
And
brought you down to the Atlanta area? What college did you go to?
Spelman. I'm a Spelman woman.
Oh.
It's not what I went to; it's what I graduated from. I'm a Spelman woman. AUC strong.
Gotcha.
And,
Awesome.
proud Spelman woman.
Awesome. Well, I love that all three of you brought the DC and DMV as a whole down to Atlanta to kind of start this whole thing. That's what makes it such a cool story for WTOP here in DC. Talk about also how it kind of coincides. I'm a big movie and TV guy here at the station too. So talk about how sort of it all sort of it dovetailed nicely into, Spike Lee's doing School Days around the same time at a HBCU set on campus. And then also A Different World is like the Cosby spinoff that's happening, showing, black colleges on the small and big screen at that time. Talk about how sort of it all was, I don't know, it kind of all serendipitously tied together. It was all of that era,
So
Well,
let me go ahead, Emma.
no, that's all right, Mike. I was going to say, when you look at School Days and Spike Lee, he's a Morehouse man, so
Yeah.
he has the experience, and he knows the culture, and he walked that walk. So that's my tie. But I think Amadi, you're going to head this way. At being a graduate and to hear Different World and those talking about Freaknik on TV, it still blows my mind even when I look at the reruns, syndicated. But it's just we had no inclination what we were doing. We were
And
having
don't
fun.
leave it. You cannot leave out the Boondocks, okay? They mentioned Freaknik. It's amazing to me. When we started it, we didn't know that it would become a movement, but it's just amazing to be able to sit back and look at what our club did, what we brought to life, if you will, for so many people. And I think a lot of times when people are creating something, if you're not setting out to create a movement, which we were not, but it became that. So sometimes I think when you step back years later and look back into the past, you're amazed, at least I am. I'm amazed at what that little thing became. In fact, I've said this to people. A lot of my pictures were used in the documentary. I did not know that at the time when I was taking pictures for the yearbook, that I would be able to use those pictures on a big screen. So it's just a testament to how when you're doing something one day, you don't know what it will blossom into 10, 15, 20, in this case, 41
40.
years down the road.
Yeah. And let me just chime in and say this, and I just want to say this honestly, that at that time, especially as the president, of the DC Metro Club, I actually had maybe a subconscious intention, I'll say, that what I was doing would be lasting, that the work that I put into in terms of organizing our club and our club's activities and events would be events that would continue after me, after I was gone. I knew that. In fact, I knew I was leaving the organization when I did in the capable hands of Emma and Monique and many of our other students. I knew that they would carry on. And I also knew that this spring picnic that we had been organizing and the popularity of it, I did see it grow, especially from the early days, from the very first time I saw it grow. And I realized that this would likely continue to grow. And I hoped that it would continue to grow. I had no idea how big it would get to the extent that it would. But I did actually hope and expect that it would be something that would continue to grow. And I feel like, for all of us, we were involved in our role in the DC Metro Club because of our desire to serve.
Right.
We wanted to help. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted what we did to have a lasting impression. I will say that. And I continue to be the same kind of person today. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is going to make a difference in the long run.
Well, but that's a perfect lead in, Amadi, to talking about how we were as a group, as an organization. We were very well organized. And I have to give my hat off, take my hat off to Amadi. Amadi, he's a great leader today, and he was a great leader back then. And so our club was very, very well organized. Amadi can speak to that because, he was the leader, Emma, all of us. We were very effective, I think, because of how organized we were.
And we also, and I just want to make sure people know it wasn't just Spelman and Morehouse. We had support from Clark. We had support from Morris Brown. So if you were from the DMV, and as far as Baltimore, we had students that were part of our club as far as Baltimore, because they didn't have a Baltimore club then. But you were welcome. We just wanted to make sure that you got, when you came to Hotline, when you came to the AUC, that you had somewhere to connect. And the club, I know many students stayed at both colleges because they found that family netting in the DC Metro Club. So everything we did, yes, Freaknik was to pass on, but we never saw it pass it on to other hands. And I think that's where the breakdown is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of talking about the documentary. I'm really pleased with how well they showed the journey from the beginning to the unfortunate demise. But I think as a documentary, they did a great job. They did
excellent job.
Yeah, they did an excellent job.
Now, when you say the demise, when did it eventually end?
I think it was 99.
98.
Was it 90?
Okay.
Well, the Olympics came in 96. I'd have to go back and look at it. And it was because of the Olympics. And I was here during that time. So it was because of the Olympics that they no longer wanted Freaknik to be an event.
Oh, I see.
Because we were
Atlanta.
Right. Atlanta became the world stage.
Right.
Freaknik had been going on, for years, but with how things were happening in the city, a lot of the support that my understanding is that a lot of the support that they had hoped to get from the city in those latter years, I don't think they were able to get. And I know that, and you can see this in the documentary, and I was here, they shut down many of the pivotal exits on the 285 ramp and on the 85 downtown connector, it's what it's called. And so when you shut down certain exits, that makes it so that people can no longer enter into certain parts of the city, which is what forced people out into the suburbs, namely DeKalb County, Clayton County. And so you had traffic jams, not just in the city of Atlanta, but now you've got traffic jams in the suburbs calling for the police in those areas to join in with the police in Atlanta to help navigate and to help deal with traffic.
Right. Wow. Well, thanks. We had to cover, we spent so much time on the founding and the evolution, and I guess we had to get a quick soundbite there on how, how it kind of sadly came to an end there at the end. But the Olympics that's a good point to bring that in. Well, I think it must be so cool for all three of you to be, fire this up on Hulu and and watch it. It's just must bring back so many great memories. And by the way, for someone like me who what wasn't founding it, like, wasn't involved in it, just watching it, just as a casual spectator, it's just cool to see all the big names that came through there, the Tupacs and the Biggies, and everyone was coming to this thing. And also all the other cool tie-ins, the food, the rims, the cars, the music, like it's like a pop culture thing all the way around. So
Yes. I'll just say this, Jason, that actually I was surprised to learn really through watching the documentary myself at how much that event that we started, Freaknik, became the platform for so many of Atlanta's talented musicians and music producers and all to have a place and a stage for them to showcase all that they had to offer, and really kind of gave birth to what we know today as Atlanta as kind of the hip hop culture center of the South. That they built that event on top of the Freaknik that we created. So I'd say that part, I'm pretty proud of and happy to see.
I just want to say that Jay Allen of Swirl and all those involved with Hulu and Disney, especially Hulu, you're talking about P. Frank and all of them, how they did a timeline for me as an educator now, who 41 years later, looking back at Freaknik, I am so glad and thankful that they included us as part of the timeline. That they didn't start in the 90s when it exploded to what it became.
Right.
That they went back in time to get the foundation. It's like building a house. You don't put a roof and walls on before you put a foundation. And they went back and got the foundation. And for even me as part of the team, as the founding team with the club, it gave me an idea and a sense of where the breakdown took place, when it took place, and why it had to be rest in peace, laid to rest, because it was not what we wanted, and it's not necessarily what we represented, but it was what it was. Last year, there was somebody trying to bring it back, and I just want to say, you cannot reincarnate that. Freaknik had a season. Those who have their memories, good for you. Those who have heard about it, and you heard about it, but you don't know all the details, watch a documentary. You're going to learn. But that has been laid to rest. But history has been impacted, and we're just glad to be a part of. We're just glad for Swirl Films with Jay Allen, and we're just glad what Hulu did and how they included us as part of the presence, and even bringing us back, Jason, even bringing us back together 40 years later. This has been a journey that I'm glad to see the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and are all three of you in the movie?
Yes.
Oh,
and
yes.
we have a fourth person, Tony Towns.
Yeah.
Tony Towns was our vice president at the time. And before we go, I'd like to give a shout out to Jay Allen, Nikki Biles, P. Frank, Geraldine Porres, Brian, can't remember Brian Turner. There were so many people who were on this film, from Swirl Films to Mass Appeal to Hulu and Disney, there was a lot of work to bring this to the big screen. And we are just really, really thankful to them for including us in this documentary. And we can't forget our members of the DC Metro Club from DC, Maryland, and Virginia in the early 80s who went to Clark, Spelman, Morehouse, and Morris Brown.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'm so glad that people are getting a chance to learn about this if they didn't know. If you're a younger viewer and listener and you just heard the Welcome to Atlanta remix, we have Jermaine Dupri, Ludacris, and they're referencing Freaknik in some of the songs. If you've only seen news footage about it, you gotta watch the Hulu documentary to see the story from the very beginning, how it was founded, how it was intended. Like you said, it paints the full picture of the whole thing, which I think is great. All right. Well, anything else we need to say about it?
Yeah, I just really, and we've said it, I'm just gonna say it again. I really want to encourage people to watch the documentary so that you are not left with what you heard about Freaknik. Go and watch the documentary so that you will know for yourself how it originated, how it started, what the intention was, and you'll know the full story. It's streaming now on Hulu, so please watch the documentary.
Yep, it's called Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told, streaming now on Hulu. Everyone, check it out. Hey, thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us, and this was so much fun.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Yes, we appreciate you and having us on to talk about and share our story.
All right, well, DC Metro Club forever, right?
Yeah.
Reunited.
Woodrow Wilson High, Potomac High, and Dunbar. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Paul Lawrence Dunbar.
You wanted to give the high schools
Crimson Tide, yes.
Okay.
Different roll tide, I guess. Well, you're from all of you to me, you're talking to a college park, a Terp here, so I'm with you. You guys you're my people, so this is great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jason. All right, take care now.
See ya.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We'll be listening.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.